Whether you're a life coach, therapist, biohacker, invested in wellness, or in the healthcare profession, if you have an intention to work in psychedelic spaces, you're in the right place then. If you're called, get involved. But first, get informed. Let's talk the 4 N's: intake, intention, in-space integration, leading to deeper transformations. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, Tah Cole. Walk you through the process, it's all possible. Leave space for the follow-through. Most importantly, integration is not optional.
Some things need to be healed in community, and we offer you something unparalleled with the Condor Approach Live. We're going to talk about how to prepare for, navigate, and integrate your psychedelic experiences for yourself or those that you love. These live events are catalysts. They really allow you to uncover and unleash the potential that you already have within you. When you're surrounded by like-minded people who are walking the walk and are committed to the path, you may even find your next facilitator or coach, but this event is designed to foster genuine relationships, give you community that supports and uplifts you, wants to see you win. If you've been wanting to embody this understanding and take these skills to a new level, then a live dynamic environment is just the way. You can go to thecondorapproach.com. That is thecondorapproach.com, and we will see you in February.
Welcome to the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. My name is Tah Whitty. I'm so grateful to have you here with me. And before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. Welcome, y'all. Welcome. I'm so excited. It's been a while since I've been here. We have been putting up the recordings from Masterclass Mondays and talking about a lot of really awesome stuff that we've been teaching at Masterclass Mondays. And I wanted to jump on and talk to y'all today personally. I want to get back into recording more and being here with you more so that you know I'm focused directly on y'all. But this podcast is a huge love of mine, and I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate y'all listening to everything that's going on. On Masterclass Mondays, we spoke about finding where all your blocks are coming from. The month of January 2024, our theme is overcoming resistance. And one of the things that has come up a lot for myself, for the people that I coach, for family members is blocks. I don't understand why I can't do this. There's something blocking me. There's something in the way. I don't know what to do with this. And so I was like, all right, look, there's a foundation to where all my blocks come from, and I know where they come from. Do you want to know? And every time I talk to somebody about it, they're like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this? How did I not know where my blocks were coming from? And last February 2023, we had about 80 people in the room. And I started to talk about safety. And safety is a huge part of the Condor Approach and what we talk about. And all the work that I do, everything that we do is focused on safety. And I asked what safety was to people in the room. And there were all these different definitions and all these different meanings. And I said, okay, some of these things overlap, but there's not a cohesion. And so I had come up with this thing called the 7 attributes of violence. And I said, for me, safety is freedom from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, and pain. And when I said that, I said, can everybody agree on that? Everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's perfect. I said, okay. Are you free from hurt, from harm, from loss, from deficit, from injury, from death, from pain? And man, the whole room stopped. And people started to examine all the different aspects of themselves and all the different parts of themselves. And then some people started to cry. We actually had to stop things. We had to kind of reel things back because of what was coming up for people. And this concept of the 7 attributes of violence has been absolutely pinnacle in finding all the blocks that people have. And so when you consider the blocks, right, a block in your life, anything that's blocking you from doing something, anything that's blocking something is protecting something. It's keeping something away or keeping something at bay or keeping something in a certain place. A block is a safety mechanism. And so if you're not aware of that, it's time for you to lean into getting aware of the blockades that you may have in your life. interrupted safety is the main factor in any block that you have. So what's a block? A block could be stopping you from exercising. Maybe I want to lose weight, but I can't seem to get up in the morning. Something's blocking me. I'm not motivated. If you are motivated, most people are motivated, but there's something in the way of the motivation, and there's something that is driving deeper than the motivation. And so it's not you're not motivated enough. Something may be in the way. And so if there's a challenging conversation that you're going to have, or something's bothering you, let's say somebody did something that you didn't like. Maybe they came off as passive aggressive or something, and you really want to say something, but you can't say something. Why not? What's stopping you? What's blocking you from saying something? There's a safety issue. What if the person snaps at me? What if I hurt their feelings? It's a safety mechanism. So anytime that there's a blockade, there is a safety mechanism in front of you. And so anything that needs protection is not safe. If you need protection from the truth, if you need protection physically, if you need protection for your relationship, there is a threat space. So unsafety is very, very important. And when we consider ourselves in the space of having a block is not your enemy. A block it's there to function for something. You may not understand or realize or recognize because it may be an unconscious block, but it's a block nonetheless. And so we lean into understanding what that is. Okay. And the first thing is to understand what safety is. Safety is wholeness. At the Condor approach, we talk about safety being wholeness. It is wholeness. When I am whole and I don't need anything, I'm safe. If I don't need to be rescued from anything, I don't need to be protected from anything, if there's no threats, I'm whole. If I have the connections that I want, if I'm connected with my family, if I'm fulfilled, I'm whole. I'm in an integrity space. I am whole. Now, I'm free from hurt. I'm free from harm. I'm free from loss. I'm free from deficit. I'm free from injury. I'm free from death, and I'm free from pain. Those are the spaces where safety dwells. And when I look at that and I can be in that space, and that is where safety is, I can recognize that. So then we have to consider what violence is, right? Because we're talking about the 7 attributes of violence. What is violence? Now, before I dive into what violence is, I want you to know that violence is not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a thing. What does that thing do? So I really want you to stop for a moment and consider reframing your idea of violence. If you think violence is a bad thing, I want you to reframe it and start to understand that violence is violence. It's not a good or a bad thing. It is violence. Violence can be used for a lot of things. Violence is something that it's an activity or an action that disrupts the wholeness of something. That's it. It's an action or an activity that disrupts the wholeness of something. It prevents wholeness, no matter how subtle it is. Now, when you consider, maybe you have an old building on your block, right? An old house that's fallen apart. It's pretty dangerous. And so you don't want kids sneaking in there. You actually want to use the property for something else. So what do? You have to take that house down. And it requires some violence. If you're using chainsaws, if you're using a wrecking ball, if you're using people with pickaxes and just they're pulling the place apart, it is violent. It is stopping that place from being whole. Okay? And so we're pulling it apart. And so when you look at it, violence serves a lot of functions. Okay? When you look at a spider web, and an insect flies into the spider web and the spider comes out, do you think it's going to come out and pet the insect? No, it's going to come out and it's going to be violent. It's going to stab the insect with its fangs. It's going to tie it up and then it's going to suck the blood out of it. This is violence. Nature is a place that's loaded with violence. Now, intentional violence is different than unintentional violence, right? Violence for survival is different than violence for recreation, right? It's different. Okay. And so I'm just inviting you to understand that violence is an activity that disrupts wholeness or prevents wholeness. Now, as far as your blocks are concerned, anything that's blocking something is preventing some sort of violence to something. And when we talk about constructs at the Condor approach, constructs are structures. Your race, your religion, your gender, your ethnicity, your nationality, all of these things are constructs. And your constructs are often threatened by things. Now, your constructs don't have a body other than yours. And so if your constructs are threatened, if there's a threat of hurt, of harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain to your constructs will come online and override you and cause you to pull back from doing things that actually threaten the construct. It's an interesting space. I'm going to break it down a little bit about each of these things because some people tell me, well, hurt and harm is the same thing, isn't it? And I'll say they're similar. It's not the same thing. Hurt signals a breach in our safety. It's like a cracked skin. The skin is cracked open. And so now there's a hurt. Now, this alerts us to the fact that our safety has been compromised. I got a crack in my skin has been compromised. And so I'll have some feelings. And so what do I need to do for this surface level damage? What do I need to do for that? That's hurt. The next thing is harm. Harm reflects a deeper, more lasting impact on your safety. It's a step beyond hurt. And this is when we have damage that's deep and more profound. This is what we need to do healing from. If I get a cut on my skin, I'm hurt, I'll get over it quicker than if somebody stabbed me with something and went layers deep into my muscle and maybe chipped a bone. That's harmful. Okay. Now, hurt would be like harm light. Okay. And harm would be like hurt, deep levels of hurt. And they can be interchangeable, but this is the way I look at them. And so when I'm talking to people and I'm teaching people about these spaces to explore where your blocks may be, a person who's getting hurt by stuff might be able to sustain more hurt for a longer period of time than somebody who has been harmed. Hurt over a long period of time becomes harm. And that's when things become dis-ease that turns into illness. When we look at the health continuum in the Condor approach, we talk about ease versus dis-ease. And when a person moves from hurt to harm, the dis-ease level is increasing. And the dis-ease eventually becomes illness. That's where we become harmed. And it's not just a physical thing. It can be your reputation. It can be your body. It can be your constructs and so on. The next thing, loss, creates a gap in your wholeness. This is where something or somebody valuable once existed that's not there anymore. And our sense of safety is disrupted by the absence of that connection. When that connection is interrupted, we have loss. And if our connection is interrupted, we are not whole. And so that's why loss is important. Deficit is a lack of something that's essential to wholeness. This is the space where people say, I'm not enough. I don't feel like enough. I don't feel like I am enough. If you're not enough and you need to have more, remember, anything that disrupts you from being whole is violent. And so if you have a society that's built around keeping people in deficit, that is a form of violence. I'm going to say this again. If you have a society that's built on keeping people in deficit, that is violence. That's violence against wholeness. And so this is where we start to consider these things. If there's something going on in your house that's keeping you from feeling that you're enough, if somebody's saying something to you, or if there's things that are being implied in your direction that you're not enough, or if you're being deprived of affection and love, this can put you in a not enough space. And this is a violent space. I often see it in children that are neglected. Neglect is a form of deficit, and that is a form of violence. If you're not giving a child enough food or enough love, enough affection, enough time, that's a deficit space. Down the road, this is going to hurt that child, and it's going to harm that child. And this is a form of violence. I hope this is landing. The next thing is injury. Most of the time, we consider this to be a physical circumstance, a visible sign of somebody's safety being compromised. And this is beyond the physical. When you see the person is hurt, when the person has an injury, there's beyond just the physical. The person has an emotional and psychological impact that comes from the injury. And so injury is a form of hurt. It is usually a physical space. And you can have injured relationships. And your constructs can be injured. And this can cause a lot of things, including pain. Death is the next attribute of violence. And this is the cessation of life. When someone is killed or murdered or dies, and that death is actually violent to the people that are witnessing it. Removal of a person from the planet, from the way they are, from their construct as a human being. This can be a literal death. It can also be a symbolic or figurative death. Like if a person is working for a company and they retire, there's the death of that person that was working as that situation, and then a new person comes online. The retired person is now the new person. What happens to the old person? And I see this a lot in people who have retired and they don't know what to do with themselves anymore because their whole life was their career. And so now they have nothing left. And so there's this death inside. And so it's violent to the identity of that person. And that person there has to be a healing situation. And so this can provide a blockade. I don't know why I keep working. I don't know why I don't want to retire. If you don't want to retire, and get to this retired person situation, the person working is now being threatened to die. So it's going to cause blocks. And so it's like, oh, I'll work 5 more years. I hear this all the time. I'll work 2 more years. I'll work 5 more years. Like, how many more years can I do? I'll get another job. That identity is having a challenge dying. It's not safe. And so it can cause blocks. I hope this is making sense. And I'd love to hear from y'all. I'd love to hear what your thoughts on this are. Or join us in a Facebook group. That'd be awesome too. Pain is a signal that says there's been damage. There's been damage to personal wholeness or I could be witnessing somebody else, right? The pain of a mother witnessing her child be injured, or the father seeing their child injured, or a cousin or a brother, a sibling seeing another child injured, another person. There is pain associated with that. And so that pain recognizes that the other person is not whole. And then your idea around that person being whole is disrupted or threatened. So that becomes unsafe. And so these are things that can get in the way of us doing things. My mother wouldn't let me do certain sports or certain things because she was afraid of me not being whole. And so she provided a block for me doing certain things. Blocks are not there to hurt people. They're there to protect something. And sometimes in protecting something, they do cause damage, right? Because it could be a damage to your desires. Your desires are very important too. And if your desires get threatened, it's a safety issue. There's a block to your desires, right? So this is where it gets a little tricky. When we're looking for these blocks, where can they be hidden? These blocks can be hidden in all over the place. And in the Condor approach, we have what we call the 6 aspects of self: spirit, mind, construct, emotion, body, microbiome. Say that again. Spirit, mind and mental processes, constructs, emotions, which is the heart and intuition space, the body, and the microbiome. Now, these are all aspects of the self where safety issues can reside, where they can dwell. And in that space, this is where we apply the 7 attributes of violence. Has my spirit been broken? How many times have you heard that? Oh, I have a broken spirit. My spirit's been broken. I don't have enough spirit. I can't think straight. My mind is messed up, or I don't like these ideas. My constructs, that religion is messed up. This religion is good. That religion is threatened. All of these things can be affected by the 7 attributes of violence, including the microbiome. On Masterclass Mondays, and I want you to go subscribe to Masterclass Mondays and take a look at the replay. I spoke about microbiome and the depth of the microbiome and how the microbiome can be affected by what you're eating. And so if you have an overgrowth of yeast in your microbiome, and yeast loves sugar, if you're eating a lot of sugar, it's not just a chemical addiction that you have. The yeast in your gut may be requiring a lot of sugar, so it can drive your cravings for sugar. And so if it doesn't get sugar, it can become a blockade to you doing your fitness diet. The yeast that's growing inside of your gut may be looking for sugar. So these are some ways that blocks can come up that people haven't been really exploring. And remember, it's a safety issue, not just safe to you as a human person, but to your microbiotic person. All of the gut biome that you have is eating. If it is threatened, it can provide blocks as well. Very interesting vantage point. There are plenty of things you can do about these blockade spaces. The number one thing that I invite you to do, family, is to build awareness around what safety is to you. And I invite you to use the 7 attributes of violence to lean into understanding what is safety for you. What does that mean? And ask the people around you, what is safety to you? Keep a journal, keep track of it, review it once a month. Am I in a safe space? If I'm not in a safe space, how do I get there? What do I need to do? Very important. Learn how to navigate your emotions is another thing. Right? Get in touch with your emotions, because as we teach in a Condor approach, emotions tell you if you're in ease or dis-ease. And we have a whole formula to look into this, to see where your emotions are telling you if you're in ease or dis-ease. If you're not safe, your emotions will tell you. If you've learned to block and not listen to your emotions on behalf of something else, the something else may not be safe. It can cause confusion inside and cause you to get stuck. And then you have resistance. And that's what we're here talking about this month, y'all, is overcoming resistance. Another thing that I invite you to do is talk to your family members about it. Talk to your friends, talk to your family members about what you've learned here on this podcast. Let them listen to the podcast. Hey, listen to this podcast with me. Tell me what you think. Because if there's resistance in your house around things, you can move through it when you have conversations about it. Make a plan, right? Make a plan with yourself, make a plan with your family, make a plan with the environment, make a plan with your business around safety. Start to discuss it and lean into it. Most of the people in the world are not safe. Most of the people that I speak to are not safe in one way or another. And it's causing a tremendous amount of stress, and it's causing people to be blocked, and it's causing a lot of resistance. We talked about it all. We talked about the roots. The main root of resistance and blockades is interrupted safety. We talked about the 7 attributes of violence: hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, and pain. We talked about the aspects of you that you need to be aware of: your spirit, your mind and mental processes, your constructs, your heart, intuition, emotion space, your body and your microbiome. We talked about what you can do right now to move beyond these blocks. Get aware, start to journal, talk to people, make a plan. This is the stuff that we teach at the Condor Approach, y'all. And I would really love for you to come to the Condor Approach, join a community. You have other people who are leaning into this and making these things their mainstay tools. These are tools that you haven't been taught in school. There are people who are doing psychedelics that could use these tools. And this is one of the reasons we put the Condor Approach together. But these are not just things for psychedelics. These are things for everyday life. So I'm inviting you to lean all the way in. Use these tools. To all my psychedelic facilitators who are out there, to all my psychedelic integration coaches, are you talking to your people about safety before your journeys? Are you talking about safety when people are moving home after their journeys? Are you talking about this? Because if you're not, I'm calling you in. I'm calling you in. Let's talk about safety, not harm reduction. Not harm reduction. Let's not talk about harm reduction. Let's talk about no harm. Let's talk about safety. Right? Freedom from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. We're not just talking about harm. We're talking about all of those things. Hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain, freedom from those things. So I'm calling you in. Let's go, my psychedelic people. Where you at? Let's start applying this to your journeys. Let's start applying this to your clients. If you're not integrating people before and after, what are you doing? And if you need help with that and you don't have structures around it, come to the Condor Approach. The next Condor Approach is February 22nd to the 24th in Austin, Texas. I'm inviting you to come. And today, if you use this code, Friend of Condor, FRIENDOFCONDOR, I'm going to take $1,000 off of your tuition to get into the Condor Approach. 1,000 off. So use that code. Come to the Condor Approach. Learn these tools. Get in with the community. Get in on the calls, get into the portal, get all of this information that we're teaching y'all. This is important stuff. And there's only so much that I can teach you on a podcast in 20, 30 minutes. Come to the Condor Approach. We're talking about 3 days from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we're going in and we're learning this stuff and we're applying it and we're teaching you how to do these things and we're doing Q&As and we're answering questions. This is an amazing event. If you're not there, I want to know why you're not there. I love you. I'm so grateful for you listening to this podcast. Thank you for being here. More to come. I'm excited to see y'all in February. I can't wait. Join us in the Facebook group. Join us on Instagram. Hit the liner notes. All of the links are there. I love you. Be easy, be free. And don't forget,
integration is not optional.